The night my friends tried to set me up with Emma Collins, I learned a very simple truth about people. Some people do not really want romance. They want to watch a show like it is entertainment for them. My name is Adam Reed. I am 34 years old. By this time in my life, I had been single for a long enough period that everyone around me treated my single life like a big problem the whole community needed to solve together. My sister kept sending me pictures and profiles of different women to look at. My coworkers made many jokes about my situation all the time. My friends gave long speeches about how I needed to get back out there and start dating again, like dating was a public service or duty I had been neglecting for too long. I was not bitter or angry about all this attention. I was just tired of it. The year before this night, I had gone through a quiet breakup with a woman who liked the idea of having a stable and steady man in her life. But when stability started to look like normal everyday life, with its routines, she changed her mind. There was no big scandal, no betrayal, and no cheating involved. We simply admitted slowly to each other that we wanted different things for our futures, and we tried our best to pretend that this truth did not make it painful. After that breakup ended, I stayed away from dating for a good while. Not because I was broken or too hurt to move on, but because I had finally found some real peace in my daily life. Then my friend Mark invited me to dinner one evening. He said it would be a small group of people, and he promised it would be nothing strange or unusual. That promise should have been my clear warning sign. Nothing good has ever come after someone says the words, "nothing weird," or "nothing strange." The restaurant they chose was one of those trendy downtown places in the city. The lighting inside was kept very low, so it could hide any feelings of regret people might have. The menu used too many fancy adjectives and long words to describe even simple foods like potatoes. When I walked into the restaurant, Mark was already sitting there, at a long table with his wife, two other couples, and one empty chair, placed right beside a woman I did not know yet. She looked up when I arrived at the table. Before anyone said even one single word, I could clearly see that this was a setup. It was not because the woman did anything wrong. It was because the whole room showed it in small ways. There was that tiny shift in how people sat and moved when they think they are about to watch something interesting happen. There were quick glances between them and suppressed smiles they tried to hide. Mark's wife suddenly became very interested in looking at her drink in her glass. One guy sitting at the end of the table leaned back in his chair like he had bought an expensive ticket to a show. The woman beside the empty chair seemed to notice all of this too. Her name, I learned just a second later, was Emma. She was around my age, maybe in her early 30s. She had warm brown eyes that looked kind, shoulder-length dark hair, and a navy blue dress that looked simple in the best possible way. She was a plus-size woman, yes, but that was not the first thing anyone would notice about her. What stood out first was how still and calm she remained in that moment. She was not shy or scared. She was still and steady. It looked like someone who had walked into the room, understood the temperature and mood of the place immediately, and decided not to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her flinch or show weakness. Mark stood up too quickly when he saw me. "Adam, there he is," he said with energy. I gave him a direct look and replied, "Here I am." "This is Emma," he said, gesturing toward her like a game show host who had a guilty conscience. "Emma, Adam." Emma smiled in a polite way and said, "Hi." I said hi back to her. Then Mark added with some nerves, "We thought you two might, hit it off well." The table went too quiet right after those words. There it was. This was not really a date. It was more like a test, and maybe even a joke for them to enjoy. I do not know exactly what reaction they expected from me on that night. They probably expected discomfort from me, or an awkward laugh, or a polite way to escape the situation. Maybe they thought I would be shallow enough to react in a way that made them feel superior for noticing things about us. Instead of any of that, I pulled out the chair beside Emma and sat down calmly. Good, I said, because I was hoping there would be at least one person here I had not already heard tell the same 3 stories over and over. Emma looked at me, and she really looked carefully. One corner of her mouth moved, like she was trying very hard not to smile at my words. Mark blinked in surprise. Wow, starting aggressive, he said. You invited me to a surprise dinner with witnesses all around, I said back. Aggressive feels appropriate for this situation. That comment got a couple of laughs from the table, but the laughs sounded nervous now. That was good. Emma picked up her water glass and said clearly, "For the record, I also was told this was a normal dinner." I turned toward her and replied, "So, we were both lied to, apparently." "Strong foundation," she said. Her smile came through fully this time. It was small, sharp, and beautiful. That was the exact moment when I knew this evening might not go the way the room full of people expected it to go. For the first 20 minutes after I sat down, people tried hard to behave normally, and failed at it. Conversations kept detours toward us too, and then quickly away from us, like everyone wanted to check whether the chemistry experiment they planned had exploded yet or not. Emma handled all of this attention with more grace and calm than they really deserved from her. She worked as a high school art teacher, she explained. She had once accidentally ordered 70 pounds of clay instead of only 7 pounds, because the supplier's website was designed very poorly, almost like it was made by a raccoon with Wi-Fi access. She loved visiting old bookstores in her free time. She hated the taste of cilantro in food, and she had an extremely specific theory that every bad first date could be identified quickly by how a man treated the waiter in the first 10 minutes of being at the table. "That seems harsh," I said to her. "It is generous," she replied with honesty. "I used to give them 20 minutes before deciding." I laughed for real in that moment. Not just a polite laugh. It was real laughter that came from inside. The kind of laughter that made Mark glance over at us with an expression I could not fully read. Maybe it was confusion on his face. Maybe it was disappointment. Maybe it was the uncomfortable realization that the person he thought would be the joke of the night had become the most interesting person sitting at the entire table. Then one of the husbands at the table, whose name was Brad, opened his mouth and confirmed my lowest expectations about him. He leaned back in his chair with a big grin and said loudly, "So Adam, be honest with us. Is Emma your usual type?" The whole table froze in silence when he asked that. Emma's face did not change much on the outside, but I saw her hand tighten around her fork a little bit. That was the big moment, the one the entire night had been building toward from the start. This was the moment where everyone would find out what kind of man I was willing to be when a woman's dignity was on the table, and people expected me to laugh along with their joke. I set my drink down very slowly on the table. Then I looked straight at Brad and said, "No." The room went completely silent after that word. Emma looked down at her plate. And before that silence could turn into something cruel or hurtful, I finished my thought. She is smarter, warmer, and funnier than most women I have been lucky enough to sit beside. I turned slightly toward her, not performing for the crowd, but just making sure she heard me clearly. "So, if you are asking whether I usually get set up for someone this interesting, the answer is no." Nobody moved an inch at the table. Brad's grin died first and disappeared. Mark's wife stared deeply into her glass. Emma lifted her eyes to mine, and for one full second, all the noise in the busy restaurant seemed to fall away completely. Then I looked back at Brad. "And if you are asking something else," I said calmly and firmly, "don't." That left the whole table speechless, exactly like the title of this kind of story promised. "But, Emma?" Emma smiled. Not the polite one from before. A real smile appeared on her face. And then, with perfect calm in her voice, she said, "Well, that was unexpected." I picked up my menu again. Good unexpected, or we should escape through the kitchen unexpected. She leaned closer to me, just slightly, asked me again after dessert, and for the first time all night, I forgot that the room was watching us. Dessert became the safest deadline I had ever been given in my life. Not because the room full of people got easier to be around. It was because Emma became more comfortable. Once Brad's rude comment had been shut down properly, the table lost its appetite for cruelty. They spent the next half hour pretending the whole thing had never happened at all. That was always the pattern with people like that. They loved a sharp and dramatic moment until it required them to take real accountability for their actions. Emma did not make it easy for them to forget. She did not storm out of the restaurant angrily. She did not shrink into herself. She did not reward anyone with visible damage or hurt on her face. She simply turned toward me and started talking, like the rest of the table had become quiet background music that did not matter. "So," she said, unfolding her napkin again, "what do you do when you're not rescuing blind dates from social experiments?" I told her that I manage operations for a regional bookstore chain. Her eyes lit up with real interest. "You're kidding," she said. "I rarely start with my most seductive fact about my job, but yes, that is actually dangerously close to seductive," I laughed. Books, logistics, and access to staff recommendations? Please, that is a power combination. That was exactly how we got from an awkward setup to our first real conversation. She asked good questions, not the job interview kind of questions, the kind that made you reveal things by accident without planning to. She wanted to know what book I judged people for pretending to like, even when they did not. Which store in our chain had the best atmosphere for customers. Whether I believed people bought books for who they were right now or for who they wanted to become in the future. I told her it was both at the same time. She smiled like that answer pleased her very much. Then she told me about her students in detail. Not in the heroic teacher way some people perform for attention, but with real affection and real frustration mixed together in her voice. One kid who only drew dragons, but made each dragon emotionally specific with feelings. One senior student who had painted a portrait of her grandmother, from memory, and made the whole class go quiet with respect. One freshman who kept hiding tiny cartoon frogs in every assignment like an artistic signature, only he understood. By the time the dessert menus came to the table, I had forgotten that half the table even existed anymore. That apparently bothered Mark quite a bit. He leaned in with a forced grin and said, "Wow, you two are really hitting it off." Emma looked straight at him. Was that not the plan? His grin twitched uncomfortably. "No, of course," he said. "I just mean, you seem surprised," I said to him. Mark looked at me directly. I held his gaze steadily. Not with anger, because anger gives people too much drama to hide behind. Just steadily and calmly. He cleared his throat and looked away first. Good. Emma noticed all of it. Of course she did. When the waiter came back, she ordered chocolate cake and 2 forks without even asking me first. I looked at her and called it bold. "Assumption," I said. "You defended my honor," she replied. "You have earned shared cake privileges." "Is that the system now?" I asked. "It is now," she said with confidence. The cake arrived soon after, and for a while, the evening felt almost normal. It was actually better than normal. She had a dry sense of humor that kept sneaking up on me and surprising me. She made fun of herself without ever putting herself down, which was a difference I respected immediately. And every time I caught the table watching us closely, she seemed less embarrassed and more amused by it all. Still, I could feel there was something deeper under the surface, something she was holding carefully inside. It came out after dinner when people started gathering their coats, checking their phones, and splitting the bill with the emotional intensity of a treaty negotiation. Emma slipped her purse over her shoulder and said, "I am going to get some air." I followed 2 minutes later, after giving Mark a look that said our conversation was not over yet. She was outside under the restaurant awning, with her arms folded lightly, and city lights catching in her hair. She looked calm, too calm. I stopped beside her. "You okay?" She smiled without looking at me. That question has become very popular tonight. That is not an answer, I said. No, she replied. She looked at the sidewalk. I am okay. I am also tired of being okay in rooms where people expect me not to be. That was a sentence with a lot of history behind it. I did not rush into asking more. She glanced at me. You handled Brad well? He made it easy, I said. No, her voice softened. He made it familiar. That hit me harder. Emma took a breath and let it out slowly. I knew what this was 5 minutes after I sat down, maybe earlier. Mark's wife kept over-smiling, and Brad looked like he was waiting for a reaction. I almost left, she added. Why didn't you? She looked at me then. Because you walked in. My chest tightened. Not because it was romantic in a movie way, because it was trust given before I had earned much of it. I thought, she continued, maybe if you looked disappointed, I would excuse myself, go home and delete 3 phone numbers before midnight. And if I didn't? Then maybe dinner would be interesting. I smiled a little. Was it? She looked at me for one long second. It became interesting. The door opened behind us. Mark stepped out, hands in his jacket pockets, wearing the uncomfortable face of a man who knew he needed to apologize, but hoped the sidewalk might do it for him. Hey, he said. Adam, can I talk to you for a second? Emma looked between us. I can give you 2 space. No, I said. You can stay. Mark's face got worse. Good. He deserved witnesses too. Look, I didn't mean for anything to get awkward. Emma let out a quiet laugh. That is an incredible sentence. Mark glanced at her, then back at me. I just thought you two might be good for each other. That part could be true, I said. The problem is you invited us like people and watched us like entertainment. That landed hard. Mark looked down. Brad was out of line, he muttered. Yes, I said, and everyone who sat there waiting to see what I would do was right there with him. He did not have an answer. Emma did. She stepped slightly forward and said, For what it is worth, I do not need anyone punished. I just need fewer people confusing cruelty with honesty. Mark looked properly ashamed then, finally. I am sorry, he said. Emma nodded once. Accepted, not erased. That sentence made me look at her again, because that was the kind of strength people miss when they are too busy judging what is easy to see on the surface. Mark went back inside after that, leaving us alone under the awning. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Emma looked at me and said, You know, I had a speech ready. For him, for the table, for all of them. It was very good, sharp, devastating, possibly too long. What happened to it? She smiled. You ruined it. I apologize. No, you do not. No, I admitted, I really do not. Rain started lightly then, soft enough not to run away from. Emma looked up at it, then back at me. So, she said, you asked earlier, good unexpected or kitchen escape unexpected? I tucked my hands into my jacket pockets and looked at her properly. Good unexpected. Her smile came slowly, warm this time. Good, she said, because I was hoping you would ask me out without an audience. And just like that, the entire night stopped belonging to the people who set us up. I looked at Emma, under the restaurant awning, rain softening the city lights behind her, and realized something uncomfortable. I had not wanted the night to end either. Not because I needed to prove anything to the table inside, not because I felt protective in some dramatic way. Because the woman standing in front of me had taken an evening designed to make her feel small, and somehow made the whole room reveal itself instead. So I said, Then I am asking. Her eyebrows lifted. That fast? No audience, no committee, no one pretending this was their idea. I smiled a little. Emma Collins, would you like to go out with me on purpose? Her mouth curved slowly. On purpose is important. I thought so. She looked past me through the restaurant window, where Mark and the others were still gathered near the bar, trying very hard not to stare, and failing badly. Then she looked back at me. Yes, she said, but not tonight. That caught me off guard. She noticed and smiled, not unkindly. Tonight is contaminated. I laughed once. That is fair. I do not want our first actual date to be built on me being publicly underestimated and you being decent in front of witnesses. Her voice softened. I want to know what this feels like when nobody is watching. That was the best answer she could have given, because it told me she was not dazzled by one moment. She wanted something real enough to test in daylight. Coffee Saturday, I asked. Bookstore first, she said immediately. I stared at her. What? You manage bookstores, I teach art. If you take me somewhere boring, I will lose respect for you. That is pressure. That is standards. I smiled. Bookstore Saturday, then coffee. Good. A car pulled up to the curb behind us. Emma glanced at it. That is mine. I did not want her to leave yet, which felt ridiculous after one strange dinner and a chocolate cake negotiated by fork. But I also liked that she was leaving on her own terms. Before she stepped away, she turned back to me. Adam? Yeah. Thank you for what you said in there. You do not have to thank me for not being cruel. No, she said, but I can thank you for being precise. Then she got into the car and left me standing under the awning with rain on my jacket and the very strong sense that Mark had accidentally done one useful thing in his life. Saturday came slower than it should have. I spent Friday fielding 3 texts from Mark. I really did not mean it that way. Brad was being Brad. You are mad, aren't you? I answered the last one. I am disappointed. That is worse. He did not respond after that. Good. Emma met me at the downtown branch at 11 in the morning, wearing jeans, a rust-colored sweater, and a denim jacket with paint on one sleeve. Not styled too much, not trying too hard, just herself. That was the thing I noticed first. She looked comfortable in her own skin, in a way that the dinner table had tried and failed to disturb. Before we begin, she said, I judge people by what section they drift toward first. High stakes. Extremely. We spent 2 full hours in that store. 2 hours. She pulled books from shelves and told me which covers lied about the story inside. I showed her the staff recommendation wall and explained how one 80-year-old regular customer could destroy our entire ordering strategy by recommending a mystery novel to half the neighborhood. She made me pick a poetry collection. I made her pick a cookbook. Neither of us bought the books we came in thinking we wanted. That felt like a sign of good things. Afterward, we went to a small cafe around the corner, the kind with mismatched chairs and a window seat that made people accidentally honest. Halfway through coffee, Emma stirred her drink and said, Can I ask something awkward? Given our origin story, I think we are past normal. She smiled, then got serious. Did you feel like you had to defend me? I could have answered quickly, but I did not. No, I said. I felt like Brad tried to make you the punchline of a joke I did not agree to hear. And if I had handled it myself, she asked, I would have enjoyed watching him suffer. That got her. A laugh, real and bright, warm enough to pull attention from the table behind us. Then she looked down at her cup. I am used to people making assumptions before I have even opened my mouth. Men especially. She lifted her eyes again. So when you looked at me like I was simply the person sitting next to you, that mattered. Something in my chest tightened again. You were, I said, exactly. The date did not end after coffee. It turned into a walk through the art supply store, where she bought brushes and made me guess what each one was for. I failed with confidence. She respected the confidence, not the accuracy. By late afternoon, we were outside her apartment building, and neither of us had a clean reason to keep stretching the date, except the obvious one. Emma held the bookstore bag against her side. So, she said, good unexpected? Better. Her smile softened. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Not fear, fatigue. What? She turned the screen slightly. A text from Mark's wife. I heard you and Adam are actually going out. That is cute. Guess the setup worked after all. Emma stared at it for a second. Then she looked at me and said quietly, I really do not want them thinking they get credit for this. I looked at the message, then at her. They do not. Her eyes searched mine. No, they created a bad room. I stepped a little closer. You created everything worth staying for. The expression that crossed her face then was softer than anything I had seen from her yet. Before either of us could say more, she slipped her phone into her pocket and whispered, "Then come upstairs for tea, Adam. I am not ready for this date to be over." I went upstairs for tea. That sounds calmer than it felt inside. Emma's apartment was warm, bright, and full of things that made immediate sense once you knew her well. Framed student artwork on one wall, stacks of sketchbooks on the coffee table, a blue ceramic bowl full of wrapped candies by the door. Plants in every window, some thriving nicely, some clearly surviving on optimism and hope. She kicked off her shoes, set the bookstore bag on the counter, and said, "I need to warn you. My tea collection suggests I am more emotionally stable than I am." "I will try not to be misled," I replied. "Good." She made chamomile for herself and something with ginger for me, then carried both mugs to the couch. For a while, we did not talk about the dinner, or Mark, or the text message. We talked about normal things. Bad apartment plumbing problems, the best bookstore smell in the world, whether adults should be allowed to own more than one decorative blanket without being judged by others. Then she got quiet. I waited patiently. Emma looked down at her mug and said, "The thing about being made into a joke is that people always expect you to appreciate when someone else stops the joke." I understood what she meant immediately. You do not want to be grateful for basic decency. Her eyes lifted to mine. Yes, you should not have to be. That seemed to hit her harder than any compliment could have. She leaned back into the couch, one hand around the mug. "I liked what you did. I did. But I think I liked even more that you didn't treat me afterward like I was fragile." I smiled a little. "You did threaten to judge my bookstore performance. You needed pressure. I performed well. You did." The quiet after that was softer, not empty, full of good feelings. Emma set her mug down. "Adam?" "Yeah?" "I am not asking for a speech. I am not asking for reassurance. I just want the truth." She looked at me directly. "Did tonight change how you saw me?" "Yes," I said. Her expression flickered for a moment. So I finished before fear could fill in the wrong ending. "It made me see you more clearly." She did not move. "I already thought you were beautiful," I said. "But tonight, I saw the way you hold your ground. The way you refuse to become bitter, even when people hand you every reason to be. The way you can accept an apology without pretending the hurt never happened." I leaned slightly closer. "That changed how I saw you. It made me want to know you properly." Emma's eyes went bright, but she smiled through it. "That," she whispered, "was dangerously precise. I was told precision matters. It does." Then she kissed me, not because I had rescued her, not because the night had wounded her and I was convenient comfort. It felt like a choice, clear, warm, and entirely hers. When we pulled apart, she laughed softly and touched her forehead to mine. For half a moment. "Second." "What?" I asked. "I was trying not to kiss you until the second date." "How did that plan go?" "Poorly." "I am honored." "You should be." The second date happened 3 days later. No audience, no setup, no awkward table full of people waiting for a reaction. Just us in a small Italian place, where the waiter brought extra bread, and Emma drew tiny cartoon frogs on the paper napkin while telling me about a student who had finally submitted a painting, after months of saying he was not an art person. After dinner, we walked for almost an hour. She took my hand first. I liked that, not because I needed proof, but because it was Emma choosing without asking the room for permission. Mark apologized properly a week later, not by text, but in person. He came to my office, looked uncomfortable, and said, "I thought I was being funny. I was not. I am sorry." I said, "Tell her that." He did. Emma accepted it the same way she had outside the restaurant. Accepted, not erased. That became one of the things I loved about her first. She did not pretend pain was smaller than it was, just to make other people comfortable. But she also did not let it become the whole room. 3 months later, she invited me to her school's spring art show. I watched her move through the gymnasium, while students pulled her from one painting to another, each of them wanting her to see what they had made. She looked radiant there, not because of how she was dressed, but because she was exactly where she belonged. One of her students, a shy girl with purple glasses, asked if I was Miss Collins' boyfriend. Emma looked at me. I looked at her. Then I said, "I am trying very hard to earn the title." Emma smiled so big, the student giggled. A year later we moved in together. Not because it was dramatic, because Sunday mornings had started feeling strange when we woke up in different places. She brought too many blankets. I brought too many books. We compromised by buying more shelves and pretending that solved anything. 2 years after that, I proposed in the bookstore. Not in front of a crowd, no big speech over a microphone. Just Emma in the art section, holding a book she had not meant to buy. Turning around to find me with a ring and the most honest sentence I had. "I do not want to be the man who defended you one night," I told her. "I want to be the man who chooses you every ordinary day after it." She cried, then laughed, then said yes before accusing me of manipulating her with location. She was right. I absolutely had. And later when people asked how we met, Emma would smile and say, "A group of people set us up badly." Then I would add, "Luckily they underestimated both of us." What would you have done if your friend set you up on a blind date like it was a joke? And then the person beside you turned out to be the most interesting person in the room. And have you ever had someone underestimate you before they even knew you? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. This story teaches us an important lesson about respect and character that everyone should remember. Treating people with basic kindness and standing up for what is right is not something heroic or special. It is simply the correct thing to do every single day. When we stand up against mean jokes, unfair setups, or cruel words, we show strong personal values and help make the world better for others. It also reminds us that real connections and love grow best when there is no audience watching and no pressure from other people. True strength comes from choosing someone for who they truly are inside, not for how others see them or judge them. Good character, honesty, and treating people with dignity always matter more than appearances or what society expects. Learning this helps kids and adults build healthier relationships and stronger communities where everyone feels valued.